Dylan Mulvany gaslights all women when he says he's on day 223 of being a woman. The American Psychological Association calls a ceasefire on its war on men. Maybe toxic masculinity isn't what they thought it was. All genders seem to be hell-bent on taking each other down, which doesn't seem to help anyone. My name is Kris, and this is the Think Report. Dylan Mulvany and Caitlyn Jenner get into a Twitter fight over Mulvany's bulge. I said this in the last video. You can't get upset with other people when you push the boundaries. Boundaries are meant to keep us safe, keep us from getting embarrassed, keep us from hurting others. If you're going to push boundaries, fine, but you can't get upset when the boundaries push back. That's the purpose of a boundary.
It's day 233 of being a girl, and this video is for Caitlyn Jenner. If you're not Caitlyn, keep on scrolling. But if you do stay, I don't know, grab a beverage. Hi, Caitlyn. I'm Dylan, and we are two of the most privileged trans women in America at the moment. And with that comes a lot of responsibility. And although we have very different views on most things, a few days ago, I probably would have still been willing to sit down with you and try to connect with you in some way, because I automatically have a lot of respect for you as a fellow trans woman. But then you decided to ridicule me very publicly. And honestly, this tweet didn't faze me all that much. But then this one made me go, not you calling me a he. That is just, terrible. But then you didn't stop there. You said there is a difference between acceptance and tolerance, and normalizing exposing your genitals in a public way and a public place. I do not support that at all in the slightest. Dylan, ... Congrats, you're trans with a penis. Girl, you're making me sound like I'm some creepy flasher exposing myself. I was wearing perfectly normal shorts at a mall, and I've never been great with sarcasm, but I do think that last line was probably not an actual congrats.
I mean, come on. If you're going to post something publicly, it's common sense that you should expect that you're going to get some opinions that aren't 100% aligned with your own. Caitlyn Jenner's replies weren't all that controversial. She, they, I'm not sure how she identifies, replied to Mulvany's post with, "There's a difference between acceptance and tolerance, and normalizing exposing your genitals in a public way and in a public place. I do not support that at all, in the slightest. Dylan, congrats, you're trans with a penis." I mean, yeah. Caitlyn followed up with this tweet. "The LGBT community is not a community, it's a demographic. I love so many in it, but being an outspoken, common sense conservative in it is dangerous. The left has reached new levels of violence and intolerance." That's a pretty reasonable response. However, technically the LGBT community is a community, not a demographic. A trans woman is not the same demographic as a gay man. A gay man has no more in common with a trans woman than a heterosexual man. They're totally different. A trans woman was born a man, may or may not be sexually attracted to men, and feels that their gender doesn't match their sex. A gay man was also born a man, but that's about where the similarities stop. Now, this is all in the midst of Dylan Mulvany's campaign to be a woman. He's currently on day 223 of being a girl. But the thing about transgender is that these men are not girls or women. We know this. We know this. So what are they? I don't mean for this to sound condescending or degrading in any way. That's not my jam. But the trans movement is a meme. Here are a couple of definitions to consider. From Merriam Webster, a meme is an idea, behavior, style, or usage that spreads from person to person within a culture. Well, in this case, it's all of those things. It's an idea about being feminine. It's behavior about acting like a woman. It's a style of dressing like a woman. And it's a usage which can be seen as sexual preference or even using a woman's washroom, perhaps. Let's take a look at another one. From Britannica.com, a meme is a unit of cultural information spread by imitation. The term meme means from Greek mimea, meaning imitated. So again, it fits. Trans women are women who are imitating women. So fine, we've defined it. Big deal. What's the point, right? The point here is to say that an imitation of a woman is a real woman is infinitely insulting to an actual woman. It's like saying that all the women have to offer in the world is a Pamela Anderson or a Marilyn Monroe meme. What about birthing and breastfeeding children? Men who transition to women don't pick the plain Jane tomboy or the woman in the accounting department to imitate. How come they don't pick Nancy Pelosi or Roseanne to imitate? They choose to be cultural icons that represent something sexual about women. But this is different from drag. Drag queen RuPaul once said, "I do not impersonate females. How many women do you know who wear 7-inch heels, 4-foot wigs, and skin-tight dresses?" He also said, "I don't dress like a woman, I dress like a drag queen." Yes, have you ever been to a drag show? They're fantastic, they're so much fun. But they're not women. Feel free to dress however you like. It's wonderful that our culture is in a place to allow people to express themselves through clothing they wear. You can dress as a goth, and no one will bat an eye. But if you claim that you're a vampire, well, you're not. You can't transition into a vampire any more than you can transition into the opposite sex. To say that you're a man who has transitioned into a real woman is insulting to real woman beyond words. Okay, let's move on. The American Psychological Association walked back their attack on men and toxic masculinity. They changed their mission statement so that it no longer promotes the critical study of how gender shapes and constricts men's lives. This is great. We all knew that there is nothing wrong with men, but this does pull into question the trust and the expertise of the American Psychological Association if they adopt feminist tactics as their mission instead of actual research. They say they no longer endeavor to erode constraining definitions of masculinity, which historically have inhibited men's development, their capacity to form meaningful relationships, and have contributed to the oppression of other people. In other words, the mission of Division 51, which is a subordinate division of the American Psychological Association, is no longer to promote the idea that gender constricts men's lives, nor to erode the traditional notion of masculinity. As of now, the mission of Division 51 is to promote evidence-based psychological practice and the empirical study of how gender roles relate to the psychological and emotional health of men and boys. Again, why was this not always the case? There was never any evidence that toxic masculinity even existed. So I visited the APA website and I took a look at some of their writings on toxic masculinity. Here's an article I found in 2018 stating the following. In early childhood, violence and aggression are used to express emotions in distress. This is true. Anger is a secondary emotion, meaning that if you're young and you can't understand or express your emotions, you'll instead express them in anger. Anger isn't an emotion on its own. There's always something underneath it that's making you angry. They also said aggression in males shifts to asserting power over another, particularly when masculinity is threatened. I call BS on this one. I took a look at this study, and that's not actually what the study is saying. This is why it's really important to absolutely be skeptical about people and organizations that make radical statements like this. What the study actually illustrates are two things. First is that male dominance decreases when males transition to a new group of males, which makes sense, since males don't know their social standing in a new group of people, so they play it safe in fear of making a socially fatal error. The second thing is that any dominance that presents itself when males transition to a new group initially shows itself as aggressive, which makes sense since jumping into a new group would stress you out during the period of figuring out where your social standing is. And that makes sense because the stress is the primary emotion and the anger is a secondary emotion. So it comes out in anger. And then it shifts to affiliative once they determine their social standing and become more relaxed and easy with the group of people. The part that's wrong in all of this is the suggestion that, one, it's only males that do this. Women do the exact same thing. We've all seen the movie Mean Girls. This is the exact same thing. It's not a masculine thing, it's a social hierarchy thing. And two, this is not actually a problem. Many men don't want to be at the top of the dominance hierarchy. Some men just want to be left alone to write computer code or write a book or be with their families. They don't need to command large swaths of people. In this case, solving problems alone is where they maximize their happiness. Other men find joy in leadership, and there's nothing wrong with that. The assertion that fighting for the leadership position is bad is wrong. The best jobs in each field will be highly competitive, and that's totally fine. Furthermore, since the APA is supposed to be the trusted source of truth for psychological thought and leadership, I looked into how this was interpreted in the wild. The website greenhillrecovery.com created a top-ranking article on Google about toxic masculinity. They define it as unconditional physical toughness. This doesn't mean anything. Like, compared to women, men are tough. If you poke men with a knife, do they bleed? Unconditional physical toughness? It doesn't mean anything. Physical aggression, fear of emotions. So sports are toxic masculinity because that's physical aggression. Discrimination against people that aren't heterosexual. That's just simply homophobia. Hyperindependence. Again, what does this one mean? Loners? The list goes on with more nonsense. The problem with organizations like the American Psychological Association getting it wrong is that they're considered the source of truth, which means that all other organizations like greenhillrecovery.com look to them for guidance. And in this case, the APA is effectively guiding the attack on masculinity, which is sexist. There's nothing wrong with masculinity, just like there's nothing wrong with femininity. Just to further my point on how wrong this is, if a man walks into a psychologist's office and proposes that he has some psychological problem that he needs help with, and the approach of the APA certified psychologist is to tell him that he's contributed to the oppression of other people, how the hell is that supposed to help the poor guy? So what is the new definition of toxic masculinity? Well, we're still waiting to see that big picture. Although they've changed their mission statement to support evidence-based opinions, the APA still has blogs on their website that fully support the idea of toxic masculinity in its popular definition. My guess is that the idea of toxic masculinity will fade away as that thing that no one speaks about when the APA lost its marbles. If there's one thing that is clear, it's that everyone seems to be attacking everyone. Men are attacking women by gaslighting them and saying that they can be real women just like them. Women are attacking men by saying that masculinity is toxic. The world is losing control right now because no one is using their brain. People are losing faith in the media's ability to tell them the truth, and in organizations like the American Psychological Association's lack of evidence-based direction. I'm not going to say that this is the path to fascism because that would be such an inflammatory thing to say that it would require a whole other episode or episodes to qualify that statement. But what I can say is this direction doesn't do any of us any good when all genders are hurting each other. Think about that.